Good morning. Welcome to the Community Calendar. I'm Jazze, and today my guest is Dr. Leigh Johnson. She is the Associate Director for the Institute for Translational Research and an Associate Professor in the Department of Pharmacology and Neuroscience and Family Medicine. Thank you so much for joining me today. I also have the interview here with me is Ms. Patricia Bailey. She is a caregiver coach, a certified dementia practitioner, and certified belief therapist, and former board member of the North Central Texas Alzheimer's Association. Thank you, ladies, again, both for joining me today.
Good
All
morning.
right, so let's talk about Alzheimer's. Most people don't quite understand it, and I have had been personally affected by Alzheimer's and dementia. So my grandmother had dementia, and my, I want to say grandfather, my husband's grandfather, passed away from Alzheimer's. So if you could tell us, what is the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's?
Sure. So dementia is a blanket term that describes a decline in mental ability that impairs your daily functioning. And it can be one of several conditions. Alzheimer's disease is the most common, and Alzheimer's disease is characterized by a decline in memory and thinking. It's a progressive disease, and currently it's incurable.
Okay. And so you said dementia is just a wide range?
Right. It can be vascular dementia, Lewy bodies. There are many different types. And sometimes it's hard to distinguish between some of them clinically.
So what causes Alzheimer's? And can you talk about how it affects the family and the person who actually has it?
Sure. So we don't know specifically what causes Alzheimer's disease. We tend to think it's not one thing, but many things that occur over our lifetime as we age. So it can be a combination of age-related changes in the brain, as well as genetic factors. We think environmental factors and health factors such as diabetes, heart disease, things like that, can all impact your risk for developing Alzheimer's disease over time. We don't know, though, why certain communities are impacted more severely than others. And for example, African Americans have the highest prevalence of Alzheimer's disease out of any other race or ethnicity.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea that it was like that. So it's not just a genetic thing, it's something that could be triggered just because of a lifestyle?
We think that there are many factors that influence your risk for developing it. So we do know, though, that risk varies by factors like ethnicity and gender. And so while some ethnic groups like non-Hispanic whites tend to have higher genetic risk, other groups seem to have lower genetic risk and more health-related risk.
I wonder why that is, that the African American community has a higher risk. Do you think it has something to do with the food that we eat or the stress that we have?
Well, we don't know specifically why, and that's part of the importance of studying this in the African American community. We do think factors like discrimination, lower educational opportunities, as well as heart disease, diabetes. We do know there are genetic risk in the African American community, as well as a higher familial risk. So if one of your family members has Alzheimer's disease, you do have a higher risk of developing it. But we still need to understand why this community is so impacted by Alzheimer's disease.
Pat, I want to bring you into this conversation. I see you do a lot with the Alzheimer's Association and the brain study, of course, that we're going to get a little bit more into. Why is it important for you to advocate for Alzheimer's, and have you been affected personally?
So two-part question. I'm really excited to be able to talk about that today because yes, our family, we were impacted by Alzheimer's disease. My mother passed away battling Alzheimer's disease back in 2004. It was a 7-year journey.
Wow.
And the takeaway is that when you see the numbers, when I first got involved with the Alzheimer's Association, we were dealing with about 5 million cases of Alzheimer's and related dementia in the United States. Now we're dealing with 6 million. I want you to consider that within something of a decade, we've got 1 million more cases, documented cases of Alzheimer's and related dementia. And to Dr. Johnson's point, we don't know why. And we don't know why, because one of the roles that I've had the pleasure of serving and being a part of the Alzheimer's Association is talking about research, trials, and studies. I'll let Dr. Johnson speak to the numbers in that regard as to what the participation looked like, but it's an opportunity to tell our families that we've got to get into some games. We've got to get involved in some aspect of our lives and our community and making a difference. So I'm here talking about this because I just don't want my grandkids
That's right.
to have to experience this. And as we look at the numbers going out into the future, we're looking at a 2 to 3 time multiplier. It's going to be significant. And it is financially going to break the bank, because within my family, or I should say within my personal line, it was about $3,300 a month out of pocket for me, not including what my other siblings had to contribute along the way. Financially, we're not prepared, but we can get prepared and take on the power to change the future by becoming part of these research trials and studies. And this one is local, right here in our neighborhood, i.e. community, right?
Yes.
Fort Worth.
Yes. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about the brain study that you guys have going on. Lots of people are nervous. They don't normally go to the doctor anyway. And now you're talking about brain study. I'm not letting you touch my brain. So tell us some details about this brain study and what it entails.
Absolutely. So we don't touch your brain. Don't worry.
I'm just saying.
No, thank you so much for letting me talk about this, because African Americans represent less than 5% of Alzheimer's research in this country, which is a little scary, being that treatment and the prevalence rates are so high in this community. So this study involves understanding the unique risks experienced by African Americans for Alzheimer's disease. And we are trying to understand everything that contributes to this risk and this increased risk for African American families. What we are looking at and what the study involves is coming in, doing a small battery of memory tests, an interview asking you questions about your health and your medical history, your medications. We also do a MRI of the brain, as well as a PET scan of the brain, which looks to see if you have any of the markers of Alzheimer's disease. So Alzheimer's disease is characterized by buildup of plaques and tangles, amyloid and tau, and we see if there's any of that in the brain currently. And then you also do a brief medical exam and a blood draw, and we take all this data, and you can have a copy of it back, as well as have a copy sent to your doctor if that's your choice.
Okay, so it's not real invasive, but it is some medical procedures that you will have to do if you decide to do this study. Now, who is eligible? Who are you looking for as far as age-wise and even gender? Like, what are the qualifications to participate?
50 and above. So right now, all you have to do is be 50 and above, and of course, be able to safely undergo these procedures. So certain people are not able to undergo an MRI, and of course, or metal in their body or something like that.
Right. Okay. I'm just going to be honest. Okay. Because I know my African-American people. So when you are asking people to do a study, is there any pay or any incentive involved if you sign up for the study?
So yes, you are compensated for your time, and you do not have to pay to participate in any part of the study as well. So,
okay.
And you do get a copy of your results sent back to your doctor. So people are very excited to see what their blood work is, what their memory looks like. And also all of these findings can be sent back to your doctor, and you can discuss them in the course of your care.
Okay, so that's good to know that you can be compensated for those that are checking out this interview if you do decide to participate. And you can also learn about your brain health and help others as well in the same process. So some people just need a little monetary courage to do the right thing. And so I'm really glad that that is a portion of it. So if someone was interested in signing up for the brain study, where could they go?
So we do have a website, the blackalzheimersbrainstudy.com, and you can also call our offices at 817-735-2963.
Okay. I did want to talk a little bit more about Alzheimer's itself and some of the signs and symptoms for people to look out for, because I've been forgetful, right? So I'm like, oh my goodness, I forgot to take the chicken out. I told myself I was going to do that later, or I forgot to call somebody. And is that a sign of dementia or Alzheimer's at an early age? Or these things that you need to see? So what are some of the signs and symptoms?
Certainly. So everyone experiences stress and normal forgetfulness, especially now during COVID. I think everybody is more stressed and has more going on. But certainly normal forgetfulness is very normal as we age and as we have more stress. But really with Alzheimer's disease, what we're looking for is a true decline in memory. And this is things like forgetting the stove on, forgetting your way to the grocery store, getting to the grocery store and not remembering why you're there or what you're looking for, and not being able to compensate. So not being able to write a list and go to the store and use the list. But we also see changes in the ability to manage small tasks like money. We see trouble with concentrating. We typically see forgetting new information. So Alzheimer's patients can remember things from 20 years ago, but they can't remember their youngest grandbaby's name. And so it starts with the most recent memories and works its way back. And eventually a person loses their ability to care for themselves and have trouble with activities of daily living, such as dressing and bathing and eating. And I'm sure Ms. Pat can speak more about that.
Yeah, so if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so we begin to see the prevalence and that my mother was a bank teller and could no longer balance her checkbook. She began to put things away that was quite curious. I think probably the biggest thing is that she was always a very, very orderly and neat person. She was an amazing homemaker, but also worked for a living. She was now laying her clothes down in a chair. Trust me, in my house, there were no clothes laid out on the chair. Everything was hung up in the closet. Mood is important. Because one of the aspects of this particular disease and what's going on in the brain is you're seeing them begin to get emotional, have seemingly moods of some sort of depression, i.e. I want people to begin to look at if their parent is maintaining the typical state of happiness. And so as Dr. Johnson went through the complete list of, or I shouldn't say complete list, of some of the markers you need to pay close attention to, I want to look at it also where I want to talk to the ministries and all of the women that are in these various groups in the churches. And I want them to look left and right and see if Sister Mary or Sister Debbie has changed. I want to look at the usher board and see if in fact someone was late. And then he says, why was I late? Because I got lost along the way. We don't seem to know how to identify that someone is in trouble within our family. It could be the way in which they cooked a typical meal. For me, my family knows if I can't make my caramel cake, there is a problem. There is a problem. And so
Okay.
what about Big Mama's potato salad? So Jazze, the thing that's happening is that with this particular call out into the community that which you've given us this opportunity, we need to challenge civic groups, ministries. We need to challenge employers. The number one issue for people not being able to come to work is because they got an emergency call where Pawpaw got lost last night. These things are real. And if people begin to see these signs and chronicle, and then I would say count to 3.
Oh.
Seeing it once is interesting. Seeing it twice is curious. Seeing it 3 times, there's a problem.
Okay. And so for families, like you said before, you had to come out of pocket $3,300 a month for 7 years or however long you had to do it, right? Because you had to deal with the Alzheimer's to help your mother. For families who cannot afford that, what options do they have?
So for accuracy's sake, while my mom was under what's called private pay, meaning that she was not under the umbrella of Medicaid, even though as a senior. So I put her in a private pay assisted living facility for 2.5 years because she did not align with a nursing home. She could walk, she could talk, she could dance, she could laugh, she could still play some games.
Okay.
So when you look at the quality of life, you got to be able to stage yourself through this process. So let's go to that financial lane. As you ask families, what would they do for someone with Alzheimer's? I say to anybody who's over the age of 50, what are you going to do even for yourself? Because do you have long-term care insurance on yourself or on your parent? Run a parallel path. Look at it both ways. Do you understand if in fact your family member was in the military where under caregiving, they provide a stipend to be able to care for the person who was in the military or for the loved one, the spouse of someone who was in the military. If in fact you qualify financially through the Health and Human Services Department, there could be a grant fund that's available to you that you are able to be compensated to care for your loved one, and that's called aging in place. So imagine not having to place your parent or loved one in assisted living. For me, at the time, I was vice president of Proline here in Dallas. I was traveling 52 trips a year. Where and how was my mom's care? I was going to keep her safe. I think that's what I really want to say. I had to find a safe alternative. And then even if you do place your loved one in a place, how do you go about staying engaged? You just gave over the care of the person who gave you birth to another entity. There's a process to do that also, to continue with the love and the understanding. So there are financial programs. There is on the blackalzbrainstudy.com site, there are various downloadable guides that people can access to kind of get at some of these questions.
Okay.
But in addition, if people email us at info@blackalzbrainstudy.com, we can also provide maybe more information available. The point is that HSC is doing a phenomenal job of demonstrating to us they're all about community. So if someone asks us a question, we're going to do everything within our power to give that family some peace and some comfort along the way, because financially, this gap is huge. And I would say one other thing is that at the time in which your parents turn 65, you need to be able to, actually before that, I would go at 60. You need to be able to understand financially if you're going to be Medicaid worthy also.
I see.
You must know that, because you have an opportunity to put your parent in a Medicaid qualified facility and have it paid for by the federal government. The question is aging in place. If I hadn't had an opportunity for my mom to age at home with us, that would have been phenomenal. We were only able to do it for about a year.
And Ms. Pat, you talk about talking with the family members as well, so that everybody knows what the wishes are, because that's another lane to cover.
Yeah, it's very difficult living with someone or having to take care of someone that is living with Alzheimer's. And, you know, when someone gets that diagnosis, it's almost like, I don't know how to say it. It's like a death
Yeah.
sentence.
May I say it? A diagnosis of Alzheimer's is the diagnosis of caregiving for the family.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
it is.
Thank you. And when you get that diagnosis, are there any medications that are coming out? So when you get this diagnosis, you're not like, it's a caregiver for the family. We can fight this.
So right now, our medications slow the progression of the disease. We recently had a newer medication approved. There's still some issues with that, and cost is one. But right now, we're not able to cure Alzheimer's disease. What we try to do with medications is slow the progression of the disease and stop the destruction or slow the destruction of the brain cells.
Mm-hmm. Is there something that people can do as far as exercise or eat, as well as a combination with the food to help slow that process down?
Prevention is key to Alzheimer's disease prevention. One of the things, take care of your health. And that's not just eating well, but it's any conditions that you have that aren't being treated as well. So diabetes, high blood pressure. We know these things are causing damage in the brain at 20 years before Alzheimer's disease develops. So really managing your health, your lifestyle factors, constantly keeping your brain moving, stimulating your brain, engaging in activities that are challenging to you. Those are some things we know that helps, but definitely taking care of your health is a big, big factor.
Okay. And I know I'm asking a lot of questions, but I have one more. So for the families that are caregiving for a family member that's living with Alzheimer's, and one of the effects that happen is, like she said, emotional, and some of them become, I want to say, violent. As a family member, when do you say, okay, this is too much for me? And you may have to make that really hard decision to put them in a care facility and not feel bad about that decision.
So I need to say this to everyone that's listening that is a caregiver. My heart goes out to you guys because I know this is hard. And it's really hard drawing the conclusion that I can't do it when I just can't do it. But I will ask you to stay north in your mindset. The purpose and the goal of this is to be able to get our loved one through this process safe and with love. So if in fact I can move outside of what my abilities are, if I can recognize that I just don't and cannot do everything, if this is not, in my wheelhouse, then I need to seek help elsewhere. The help elsewhere can be family members. So you can stay within the framework, but sometimes actually it can also be friends that can step in. The last piece is that in this caregiving role, most of us do not take time for ourselves. So I would even say to those that are listening, it is extremely important for you to be able to respite hours aside that allows you to get in some me time, because usually that's when their outbursts become a little bit more troublesome. Someone who's exhibiting physical behavior, I would also say that that's negative or trying, you don't know the caregiver love language in which to share it with them. Everybody's got a trigger. My mom's trigger was called let's dance. So when my mom got irritated and upset, you could say let's dance to her, and she knew that you wanted to be nice and kind to her. And I was like, Mama, come on, let's go on and do that twist, girl. And she would just break out and say, oh, girl, you know I like to dance. We have to have the triggers to recenter them also. So I would ask people to start their first, do things that distract them, that were part of their happy moments in life. Get a picture out of someone that they've not forgotten their face. they know that's that baby picture of their middle child or whatever, or it's a picture of their mom. We have to adapt to where they are, then evaluate where we are and where we can be. And then if that doesn't work, then yes, seek resources elsewhere.
Okay.
And safety is the most important thing for everyone. And if you're unable to do it, then you do have to seek help. And that's a very hard thing to do.
Yeah, it's really hard. So with the brain study, I know you want people to sign up, but does it also offer an element of therapy for families who are going through that as well, or at least, you know, resources to help?
So we don't offer therapy in terms of the research. However, there are resources on our website for family members.
Okay. All right. So for one more time, if anyone is interested in signing up for the brain study, and is this ongoing or is it a certain deadline that they need to sign up by?
We are looking to recruit 1,000 African Americans. So we are taking subjects until we reach that number.
All right. Thank you so much. And give the website one more time.
blackalzbrainstudy.com.
All right. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You guys take care. God bless.
Bye.